Welcome. You are listening to the Marriage Underdogs Radio Show podcast, and I'm your host, Chris A. Matthews. And once again, we have another dynamic guest. I would like to introduce Nathaniel Turner, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist, and he is practicing outside of the New York area. Welcome, Nathaniel.
Thank you, Chris. It's a pleasure to be on the show with you, man. Thank you.
Man, I'm so glad to have you on. We met by way of Instagram. And I just had to have you on. I was looking through your profile. You do phenomenal work in that New York area, doing group-based treatment. You have a private practice. I always like to start, though, however, especially with Black male LMFTs, gaining an understanding of what led you into this field.
Yeah, so how's everybody doing that's listening? I'm really excited to be here and share this. So I'm a graduate of Howard University, right? If you got any Bison that are listening, and when I was at Howard University, HBCU, I was a psychology major. Psychology was something that I kind of like fell into. My mother was a psychology major, but honestly, when I was at Howard University, I was really kind of like finding myself. But I remember that I knew that coming out of that degree, coming out of that experience, that if I were to ever go back to school, it would have something to do with couples counseling, right? And so 6 years later, I had done a stint with the Social Security Administration. Pay was good, everything was good, but my life was internally in shambles because I knew that I should be doing more. I could be doing more. So I made a transition in 2018 to leave all that behind, leave New York behind, go to Philadelphia, attend Drexel, and get my counseling and family therapy master's degree. Since then, I've worked in juvenile justice. I've worked in child welfare. I've also worked in private practice, serving individuals, couples, and families. Most recently, I was part of a 10-month fellowship for the Eastern Group Psychotherapy Society, EGPS. Yes, that's it. EGPS, learning how to also conduct and facilitate groups. And so all of these things together have really it's been about me like feeling my way through the field, because of the fact that the field is so diverse. There's so many different ways that we can have impact, so many different ways that we can provide direct care, and really just trying to like get in where I fit in.
Definitely. I really appreciate the fact that you took the time to gain expert knowledge. You went to universities, you have supervisors you've practiced under, you've seen the field from a larger lens. Talk about why you made the choice to get degrees in formal education. There are a lot of people that just say, hey, I'm gonna work with couples, I'm gonna wing it, I'm just gonna be on Instagram and put some good content out. Talk about the difference between going and getting the training versus just being someone that just goes on personal experience. What led you to do the training part versus just talking about it off of your own personal experience?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be completely honest with you. Maybe in the beginning, it was a tinge of pride, recognizing that I didn't want to put on as if I was an expert without actually having expertise, without actually having training, without actually having put in the time to develop the knowledge base, right, and the experience base. I do think that there is definitely something to people who tend to just kind of like have a knack for relationships, and they're very personable, they're very friendly. People generally tend to gravitate towards them. They're very good communicators, so they might have a hot take on something that's going on in popular culture. But for me, I've never really been concerned with that. I've never really been too concerned with social media, for that matter. I've really just been concerned with like delivering high quality care and making sure that if anybody is coming to me for care, they will be able to leave saying and knowing that they had a great experience. They had a great experience. We were able to do real work, and that they benefited as a result of it.
So it sounds like what I'm hearing you say is you wanted to be more than just a surface-based practitioner, someone that can be relying on the gift of gab. When it came down to doing the work, getting deep in the trenches with your clients, you wanted to have a foundation of knowledge and expertise, and going to school led you to or guided you toward the tools to be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was deciding what track that I wanted to take, of course, there are several
It's a big field.
counseling tracks that you can take towards licensure or a terminal degree if that's what you choose to do. But I chose to take the LMFT route because of the systemic practitioner implications, because of the fact that we're trained to work with individuals, we're trained to work with couples, and we're also trained to work with families. Even if we're working with individuals, we're still working with individuals from a multi-systemic lens, right? We're not just seeing an individual and delivering interventions in a kind of like a one-to-one basis. We're considering how we're considering the whole picture. We're considering how this person's finances, how their relationships, how their family of origin, how their social relationships, how all of these things influence their life. And when I'm working with individuals, something that I like to tell them, I like to remind them, is that the quality of their relationships determines the quality of their life in many ways, right? And so I really like to emphasize this systemic approach, and being trained as an LMFT enabled me to do that.
So let's make sure I got that right. The quality of your relationships directly correlates to the quality of your life. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, absolutely. I was doing some research the other day on what's it on LinkedIn Learning. LinkedIn Learning is amazing, by the way. They gave me a free trial, and I was looking through some of them courses, and I was like, wow, these courses are amazing. And one of the presenters was talking about how people's quote unquote social brain had atrophied over the course of the 2 years of the pandemic, and how the return to work for a lot of people was in many ways like a shock to their system, right? Because they had fell out of step with this rhythm of being social with people, cultivating dynamic relationships, being adventurous, taking risks. And so really it's kind of just like, you trying to put it back together. It's like Humpty Dumpty fell off a wall, and you know what I'm saying? It's like once you had that great fall, you got to get put together again, right? And so
especially when introverts that don't naturally gravitate toward people because it takes away energy from them usually. So
absolutely.
Extroverts where they gain energy from people, I like that word atrophy. Say it. I can't say it. Atrophy, because when you think of atrophy, it's like the breaking down of, right?
Exactly. Exactly, from underuse, right? Yes. And so when people are coming to work with me, I really want them to not just look at whatever problems that they may be facing psychologically. I also want them to look at it socially. I want them to look at the different ways that their boundaries, or the way that they approach negotiation and conflict reconciliation. All of these things feed into the life experience that they have, which in turn affects their mood and also their functioning.
Yeah, and that's a lot of your work. As I was reading your profile and looking at some of the things that you specialize in, that holistic care, that overall wellness, and it blends well with systemic based delivery. Exactly. You mentioned too in your profile, and just in our pre recording session, how you've gotten trained in group facilitation. Talk about, for the listeners, the value of coming together in group-based practices versus individual. So, from the addiction counseling lens, where I have a background in, that's usually the preferred treatment because of this alliance approach, where when you have someone in a common situation, then you guys collectively come together to be more resilient. What about in the mental health space or the couple space? Give us more insights for those who are listening that might be considering doing group-based counseling or treatment services.
Yeah. So I'm gonna try and keep it as concise, because there's so much that can be said about groups, but I'm gonna try and keep it as concise as possible. A group specifically, like in psychotherapy, is what's considered a microcosm of a person's life, right? It's considered a microcosm of the world. So what does that mean? You can have people that are coming together for therapeutic purposes, and what they're doing by interacting with each other is they're basically engaging in all of these different reenactments simultaneously of different relationship dynamics in their own individual lives, right? So it's like it's like supercharging the therapy, the therapeutic process in a way that allows people to really be supported, right, by a whole collection of people, as opposed to this like one-to-one relationship that in many ways
Yeah, it's
is
like
very
immersion.
limited. It's exactly,
Yeah, you're immersing
immersion.
yourself in it. Yeah. And I
Hmm.
think about like when you swim, you're using all your muscles because
Exactly.
you can't just
Exactly.
use the arms. You gotta use the legs, the arms, everything to stay
Yeah,
above water. And
exactly.
I like that example you gave because within the group dynamics, you're being challenged with the management of different personalities and
Hmm.
triggers. And in therapy, we talk about countertransference and transference, right? And how there could be a resemblance of a member that correlates to your family or a past lover or a current partner for that matter. And you have to navigate those emotions in real time as you get triggered or as you connect with other people. And then you go outside of that environment and you're a lot stronger to deal with, let's say, a workplace team,
Hmm.
or for those that are in faith-based, the actual congregation members, because I want you to talk about your work with connecting the faith-based and the mental health space. I know that's something you do a lot as well. So I'm gonna give you
Hmm.
time to share one, how you got to the space you're in to be that bridge for both of those communities.
Yeah. So when I spent 3 years in Philadelphia during my time in graduate school and also postgraduate. And in that postgraduate year, it was still the middle of the pandemic, but that was also the reemergence of my faith in Christ. And so my faith journey really kind of like started fresh, at least um, I was aware of it starting fresh. The Lord was working with me way longer than that, but I was aware of what was going on at that point. And my first podcast that I had been invited to guest on was on this podcast called Interrupting Racism. And I told this sister, I was like, look, um, I'm not licensed. I'm not a specialist, maybe underselling myself, but I was just like, look, I have very limited experience. I don't know if I would necessarily be right for what it is that whatever it is that you're looking for. But I will tell you one thing. I was like, if you let me come on, I was like, and you let me talk about my faith, and you let me talk about how my faith has informed my journey through this mental health training process and the delivery that I'm now engaging in. I was like, I think that we can have a great conversation.
So mention some of the points from that conversation. Give us
Uh-huh.
the highlights of that. It sounds good.
Yeah, I mean, it was really how my training as a marriage and family therapist, in conjunction with my reading of scripture and my getting to know who God is in the person of Jesus Christ, I was able to see how so many of the dynamics that I was learning about, so much of the dysfunction that I was learning about in my training was being reflected in the Bible thousands of years ago. I was seeing it on a societal level. I was seeing it on a community level. I was seeing it on a personal level. I was seeing people really grappling with sin, right? And when I say sin, I'm not talking behaviorally where you're talking about like a person is doing the right thing or the person is doing the wrong thing. I'm talking about a person's relational distance from God and the fact that all of creation, right, which is fallen right now, right? All of the problems that we run into in some way, shape, or form stem from that relational distance from God. And so to the extent that we are able to reestablish that relationship
The
and also
alignment.
come into a greater understanding of our humanity, right? Not just mind and body, right? But mind, body, soul, spirit, right? We are able to actually pursue the life that we were made to pursue, right?
So it
John 10,
sounds like
10,
so it
right?
sounds
Life is
like then,
abundant.
just to connect the dots, it sounds like you brought the systemic approach to religion and mental health and connected the dots because, like we said earlier, MFTs, marriage and family therapists, we look at the entire picture. And as you practice therapy with a couple or an individual, you can't help but to ask about spirituality because it's one of the
Mhm.
dimensions of wellness. So you
Exactly.
look at the entire system including all the dimensions of wellness, the spirituality, the physical, the mental, the emotional, the financial. And when you go into the church or the faith-based communities, tell us about how that's been received. Has it been rejected? Give us insight on your work with that community.
It's been received well, and actually, I started reading an excerpt of a book that's talking about what does Christianity have to say about mental illness, I believe is what the book is called, and it has 30 questions, really in layman's terms, about how really these two topics that have for a very long time been seen as distinct, right? Spirituality and psychology or physiology, they should really be blended together.
Yeah,
right?
I'm told one is secular and one is not. It's like the secular, but that's what I usually get.
Yeah.
That's secular.
I think that it's short-sighted at best. And when you really do, there was a book that I read maybe like a year ago by this Christian psychiatrist named Kurt Thompson. It's called The Anatomy of the Soul. He really kind of like made that come alive for me in a very real way, where I was able to see how all of these different domains that people really see as disparate, they're all actually very interconnected. And so I've brought that to churches. I brought that speaking at conferences, and also speaking on panels, right? Specifically to people who are pursuing relationships, because of the fact that when people get into relationships and they don't actually recognize what's at stake, or they don't recognize like the totality of their humanity, they run the risk of doing a lot of damage, significant damage to themselves, significant damage to others, and by extension, significant damage to society. And so
talk about that part, right? Like for the listeners that are married in relationships, right? That's our population. Couples who are in relationships, they may be in a tough season. And when you just mentioned how if there's not an awareness of self, then there can be harm done not only to the individual, but their relationship partners and even society as a whole. What are three primary questions that the listeners can ask themselves to do a brief assessment if they are emotionally well?
If they are emotionally well.
Yeah, like how do we know if I'm emotionally well? Usually when you think about emotional and mental wellness, it's always assessed after the fact, right? It's like, okay, now I'm burned out. Okay, I've been away from my faith for a couple of years. Now I realize that it's caught up to me. How do we catch people on that slide before they get to that point where they're looking themselves in the mirror and going, I don't even know who I am anymore?
Yeah. Well, one thing I think that people can ask themselves is, how was your life peopled? Right? How was your life peopled? We should at all times be surrounding ourselves with loving community that not only pours into us, but also supports us and sharpens us and holds us accountable. And so if you don't really have anyone like that, or you're trying to do life kind of like as a lone wolf, you are not only susceptible to blind spots, right? But you're also susceptible to significant harm, because if you fall and you're by yourself and nobody's around to help you and pick you up, nobody sees, no one has a relationship with you, you could be in a serious situation.
Now hold on before you go to the next one, because I gotta highlight that. That was real.
Okay.
If you fall and no one's there to see or to be there to help you, then at that point you're by yourself, right? So you just really defined in that statement the value of community, because in this life we don't believe, like in this life we know we're gonna fall. So when you fall, when there are trials and tribulations, have you surrounded yourselves with a community that's gonna be there to help you get up?
Correct.
I love the way you said that. I just had to highlight that. Keep going. That was great.
Yeah. The next question I would ask is, are you taking captive your imaginations? Right. I often when I'm speaking to people at church events, I tell them to protect their portals, right? Watch their eyes, watch their ears, right? Because all of these things that they are exposing themselves to, it's doing something to them. It's forming them. You could even say it's discipling them in a particular way, whether they are aware of it or not, right? And so what you take in and entertain yourself with, it informs how you interact with yourself, and it also informs how you interact with other people.
Hey, you cooking right now, brother. I like that. Watch your portals, your eyes and your ears. The way you put that was brilliant, because those are the entryways into the soul, right? Love that. So we have one, make sure you're around yourself, or make sure you're surrounding yourself with the community of people, so when you fall, someone's there to help you get up. 2, guard your portals, your eyes and your ears. What's the third one?
Yeah, the third one is, are you seeking to understand? Are you seeking to empathize with more than you're seeking to be right? And this really has to do with how people approach communication and also conflict resolution. What I've seen working with couples, either married or non-married, is that often there's an avoidance of conflict, which is the reason why problems tend to fester, and bitterness and resentment tend to fester for so long. Is because there's an avoidance of actually addressing what the problem is, out of fear of entering into conflict, because that means that my relationship is wrong. There's something wrong with my relationship, when in fact, honest conflict, right? Not to destroy, but to really get to the heart of a matter, to reveal what is actually going on. That's the pathway to intimacy. Right.
So let me highlight that, because you put on a masterclass right now, right? You got warmed up. I just had to warm you up because now you're cooking. That last one was what it was right there, because you just said, when a person seeks to understand more than they seek to be understood, then they can enter conflict in a way where there's actually a growth. Conflict is designed to grow us, to get us closer to where we're trying to be, not further away from it. So when you just mentioned just now, for those listening, when you approach conflict outside of the singular goal of just wanting to be right or wanting to be understood, you add a variable. And that variable, which I heard you say, was approach the conflict as a student, to be taught by your partner their experience before simply just trying to teach them your experience.
Yeah, I like that. Approach it as a student or a continuous learner. I had a session with a client today, actually, and I really encouraged him in the midst of a difficult relationship struggle, to approach it as an opportunity to learn. Like, approach everything as an opportunity to learn. Don't just look at it as like, I'm doing something wrong or she's doing something wrong, but actually approach it as an opportunity to say, like, what is being revealed? How is my heart being revealed to me right now? And allow that to soften you, so that you're not so defensive when you're entering into discussion or exchange with this other person. This person cares about you, right? This person cares about you. And so, some of what helps us to lay down our own defenses is to be able to see ourselves in the other person. And in order for us to do that, we really have to seek to understand and empathize more than we seek to be right, and to have our own point of view held up as dominant.
So that self-talk you just provided the listeners, when you're engaging in conflict with your partner, the first thing you have to tell yourself, hey, this person cares about me. Although they might be hurt, although they might be uncomfortable at the moment, they still care about me. So I'm listening to someone provide critique around how they feel, but they still care about me. And acknowledging that the conflict doesn't have to be solved or fixed in that one conversation. Let's reframe what the objective of the conflict is. What if the objective of the conflict is to walk away with a simple, better understanding? Because if you stay married forever, you're going to have a next time. So we're really approaching conflict with the opportunity to not correct the past, but produce a foundation for a lifetime of next times.
I like that. You said a whole thing right there. I like that. That's really good.
Hey, iron sharpen iron, bro. You got me warmed up.
That's really good. I like that.
We got going now. Hey, it's shot for shot. We on it now. That's why I love this podcast, because brilliant minds like yourself, they pull something out of me, and I hope I'm doing the same for you as well, because you're spitting some really good game right now. Especially, I will not forget what you said about protecting your entryways, your ears and your eyes. And that's so important, because what we hear and what we see typically diverts to what we say.
Yeah, and what we do and how we believe.
And how we believe, it all comes together. Look, I know we're out of time, and want to make sure I be respectful because I know you got clients and things as well. But I just want to give you space to share with the listeners how they can get in contact with you, any projects that you're working on that you want support, that people can support you on. Just give us some information. Give you the final couple words.
Yeah. So right now people can find me on Instagram, underscore Nate Cultivates, NATECULTIVATES. You can also find me on ZenCare. That's the best way to get in contact with me if you're just looking to get like a comprehensive list of my services. If you wanted to contact me directly for any other inquiry, my website is ifwellness.co. And I'm also part of a tri-state abstinence community called TAC. And we have if I'm remembering correctly, our Instagram is TAC_LGW. And we put on monthly programming. We put on monthly programming for singles in the New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut tri-state. We have a growing community. I think we're around maybe like 50 people or so. And we really just kind of like support each other on this abstinent journey for individuals who are abstinent and or unmarried.
And we're gonna have to do a part 2 on that one. I already see it coming. Let's go ahead and get that booked on the calendar, part 2 with Nathaniel Turner on abstinence, because I'm sure that is a topic for those that we tailor to who might be transitioning out of a relationship and they're single, or those that are dating, wanting to transition in, but they were sustaining abstinence. I'm sure that's a topic we definitely need to get into. And brother, I'm gonna tell you, man, you are a rising star in our industry. I'm sure without a doubt that your whole caseload is going to be full. So those who are listening, get on this brother's calendar sooner rather than later, because you probably won't have any space coming up, man. You blowing up, man. I'm glad I got you on the podcast
I appreciate
right
it.
now as well. So
it.
definitely, man. For those that have been listening, I'm Chris A. Matthews. You've tuned into the Marriage Underdogs Radio Show podcast. Phenomenal guest, Nathaniel Turner. Please like us. We're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and look forward to bringing you all some really good content again next week.
All right. Take care. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Thanks for being here.